Fried chicken and potato salad are quintessentially American recipes. In fact, they're on the menu every year in August at our old home day at the Methodist Church in Vermont. But there is one other place in the world that loves fried chicken, and oddly enough, that's Japan. In fact, Kentucky Fried Chicken every year sells a Christmas bucket. You have to make reservations by late October to celebrate that particular holiday. So here at Milk Street today, we're doing something a little bit odd. We're going to look to Japan to reinvent two American classics. We're going to use a little bit of ginger juice to make our fried chicken to tenderize the meat. And then we're going to redo potato salad using a few ingredients from Japan to make it actually lighter and much more delicious. So stay tuned and hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Milk Street. Yes. I never get tired of hearing that. You know, we should do this 3 or 4 more times before we cook. There's one place in the world that actually loves fried chicken probably more than we do, which seems odd. South Korea loves fried chicken, but Japan also really loves fried chicken. In 1974, Kentucky Fried Chicken figured out they could sell something called the Christmas bucket, which has fried chicken. Sometimes it has champagne and cake, but it's for Christmas. And they sell millions of them. It's very, very popular. But they also have a recipe that's not called KFC. This is just a Japanese recipe called JFC, Japanese fried chicken, which uses ginger and a very thin coating on the outside. It's boneless pieces of chicken. It's very easy to do. And we think here at Milk Street, it may be a better alternative to the big bone-in pieces. So with that wonderful introduction in mind, what do we do first?
That's right, Chris. In Japan, the popular fried chicken is actually boneless. And that's great for the home cook because it means it's quicker, it's easier to handle. You don't have to worry about an overnight brine and buttermilk or anything like that. We are starting with boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And they're great because they're hard to dry out, they're very juicy, and of course, being boneless and skinless, they're gonna cook up really quickly. We have about 2 pounds here. We've cut them into thirds. And now we're gonna make a quick marinade that the chicken's just gonna soak in before it goes into the fryer. So to start that marinade, I have 3 ounces of ginger here. And one of the things that's wonderful about this marinade, you don't have to peel the ginger. We tried making it peeled and unpeeled, and we couldn't even tell the difference.
You knew I was sitting here watching you, wondering why it wasn't peeled.
Right? Also, you know that we usually use a wand grater when we're grating ginger, so we get those really fine shreds. But in this application, we're actually gonna pick up the ginger and squeeze it, and we like the texture of the thicker ginger, so you wanna use a box grater here. Okay, so we have our grated ginger, and you just wanna gather it up, and we're actually gonna squeeze the juice right into the bowl. That's just gonna make sure that in this quick marinade, we're getting all the flavor that we can. To that, we have a tablespoon of lemon zest, and we have a 1/4 cup of sake, the Japanese rice wine. And then we have a 1/4 cup of tamari, which is a Japanese version of soy sauce. It's very similar to soy sauce, but just like soy sauce, it's fermented soybeans, but it's not fermented with wheat, typically. So I'm gonna mix this together and add the chicken. And this is just gonna marinate for 30 minutes to an hour. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge and we can come back in about an hour. Okay, Chris, so we have our chicken, which has been marinating for about an hour, and now we're just gonna dredge it. So I have a teaspoon of just black pepper here, and we have a tablespoon of shichimi togarashi, which is a Japanese spice blend. You can usually find it in the Asian section of the grocery store.
Not in the German section?
Not in the German section,
good.
surprisingly. Or you can find it online. If you can't find it, that's fine too. You can just do 2 teaspoons of sesame seeds and a teaspoon of red pepper flakes as a substitute. But it adds some nice heat to that dredge. So I'm gonna just whisk this together to get it evenly combined. And I should mention here, I have 2 cups of cornstarch, not flour. In Japan, it's typical to use potato starch as the coating. Potato starch can be a little bit difficult to deal with. It can get a little bit gummy. We found that using cornstarch produced that same really light, delicious, crisp crunch, and it's really easy to find and easy to work with. So that's all mixed up. And you can just get in there with your hands and brush off any large chunks of the ginger. It's okay if there's some little pieces because it gives it nice texture and good flavor. And we're just gonna dredge these. You wanna make sure they're evenly coated. And then we're gonna pop these in the fridge for half hour to an hour, and that's just to let the coating adhere, and it's gonna make it a cleaner fry with it all really nicely coated. You don't wanna leave it longer than an hour because then it can start to get gummy. Okay, Chris, so our chicken has been sitting in the fridge for an hour. You can see that the dredge has kind of soaked into the meat a little bit and formed almost like a crust. We have our oil heating up. You want to make sure that you have a large pot, something that holds at least 6 quarts, and you want to use 2 quarts of oil. You can't shallow fry these because then the bottom will burn. So you want 2 quarts of oil. We have peanut oil. It has great flavor. It's really a good frying oil, but you could use vegetable oil, canola oil, something neutral with a high smoke point. We want it to come up to 375 degrees before we add the chicken. So we're gonna let it heat for another minute and make a dipping sauce. So the dipping sauce really mirrors the flavors that we had in that marinade. Tamari is back. We have another 1/4 cup of tamari. We also have a 1/4 cup of unseasoned rice wine vinegar for a little acid. And you want to get unseasoned just because the seasoned has added salt and sugar, and we want to kind of control those flavors. And then we have a 1/4 teaspoon, just a little bit of toasted sesame oil. And we have a teaspoon of finely grated ginger, and you can see this time we did peel it and we did use one of those wand-style graters to get it nice and fine so that it disperses really evenly into the sauce. Now let's temp our oil, see if we're ready to fry. Okay, Chris, 375. And it's worth noting that, of course, we've heated our oil over medium-high heat. We want it at 375. That temperature is gonna drop when you add the chicken, but that's okay. You don't wanna bring it back up. You actually want it frying between 325 and 350. So I'm just gonna add 1/3 of the chicken here, because we don't wanna crowd the pan. That would make it too cool. And this is gonna take about 5 minutes until it's nice and crisp and golden brown. And Chris, because we have that boneless meat and because it's dark meat, it really is kind of foolproof. You know, I think a lot of people are a little nervous about frying at home, and understandably. I mean, you're working with a hot vat of oil, but if you set yourself up, you get organized with a rack, you make sure you have your temperature, you know, some nice long tongs. It's really simple, and with a recipe like this, it comes together quickly. You're not gonna overcook it.
Why is it every time you say foolproof, I know who the fool is? I just have this feeling.
Crisp-proof.
Yeah, it's crisp-proof.
It's crisp-proof. I'm gonna use a spider. You could also use a pair of tongs if you don't have one of these, but I'm just gonna turn it a little bit, just to make sure nothing is sticking and that it cooks evenly. All right, Chris, so this is what we're looking for. Isn't that beautiful?
It is beautiful.
And you know, they might cook at slightly different rates, so if something doesn't look like it has that nice crust, you can just put it back in and give it another minute. So Chris, I'm gonna transfer these to a wire rack, and I'm gonna put them in the oven just to keep warm, and then we can fry off the last 2 batches. All right, Chris, do you want to try some of this fried chicken?
Yeah.
All right, yes, get right in the sauce. You can drizzle that right over the top. Beautiful.
Oh.
It's so crisp. And that's another benefit of this recipe. It stays delicious and crisp when you serve it cold the next day.
The fact there's no skin on this, I actually really like, because that's a problem with fried chicken, is how do you render the fat out of the skin? And the coating is incredibly thin. And the ginger's also obviously nice as well. So today at Milk Street, we fried chicken, but we did it the JFC way, Japanese fried chicken, skinless, boneless chicken thighs, marinated for up to an hour, some soy sauce and ginger, and then a very simple coating of cornstarch and sashimi togarashi. See, I said it, I knew I could do it. And it just takes 5 minutes to fry, crispy, gingery, an excellent recipe. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
So Erica, we're gonna stir fry green beans, but we're not gonna use a wok. Now, if you go to a restaurant kitchen that has a big wok, they have a huge burner with lots of heat and a tremendous amount of smoke and fire, and the green beans cook in just a couple minutes and they get a great char. But you're gonna figure out how to do this in a skillet.
Right.
And use sort of a Vietnamese flavor profile at the same time.
Exactly. We got our inspiration from Vietnam, where they make a sauce, which is called Nuoc Mao. It's a technique where they essentially make a caramel. And not only does that add some nice bittersweet notes to the sauce, it clings to each and every green bean. We really liked that. So I'm gonna start off by just getting our sauce ingredients ready. We're gonna actually use light brown sugar. And this is 2 tablespoons.
I just have to, I just need to point out that Erica, who's a baker, has this whisk. So it's a great stocking stuffer around the holidays.
It is.
Yeah,
It's a
okay.
perfect. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
just
where I
thought
got
I'd mention
mine
it.
from
Yeah.
my mom. And to this, we're going to add a tablespoon of fish sauce, another very common Vietnamese ingredient. Add some nice savory notes, and then a tablespoon of soy sauce. And we're just going to whisk this together with my little whisk. That is done. We're just going to set this aside over here. Now, for this recipe, we're going to cook a pound of green beans, but we have to make sure these are really dry first because we're going to be cooking these in oil and we don't want it to splatter everywhere when the water gets in there. Put them in a towel and really pat them dry.
So you're a mom.
Green bean,
so
yeah, my little green bean swaddle.
Swaddle. It's a swaddle. Yeah, that's
Swaddling was one of the hardest things.
goes down like
Strangely
this.
enough,
And
yeah,
over
you
like
know,
this,
yeah,
and-
yeah. So I'm just going to slide these over, and I'm going to start to cut them. It's pretty easy. We're just going to cut these in half, but we're going to do it at a really steep bias. And it's not just to make them look pretty, which it does, but it's also to create more cut surface area for the sauce to sort of get inside the beans so that there's more flavor in every bite. So I'm just going to kind of stagger these. I like to do a bunch at a time or else, we'll be here forever. And then you're just going to cut them in half like that. Okay, so these are all done. These are all ready to go. And this is 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil over medium-high heat. It's a 12-inch skillet. Okay, and we want to make sure that this gets really good and hot. We want to see the wisps of smoke coming off of the pan before we add our green beans. And what's really unique about this recipe is we're actually not going to stir the stir fry.
It's just a fry.
It's fried, yeah. No, but what this does is allows us to get a really nice char on the bottom layer of beans. And it's okay that not all the beans are charred because we're going to stir it all up together and you're not going to be able to notice, but it really develops a nice deep flavor for our beans.
Okay.
Okay, now you can see the oil is shimmering. And you want to see a few wisps, which I'm starting to see. Do you see
Do I have
this?
to look down like you?
Yeah,
From over
I
here?
always have
See
it.
it?
I have a better vantage point than you do.
I guess so.
Yeah. So I'm going to add these carefully. I want to back off. I'm not stirring, I'm just putting them into an even layer. And we're going to let these cook for 3 minutes. And we're not going to touch them. This is harder to do than you may think.
For me, especially, yes.
Next, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of water. And then we're going to immediately put a lid on. And this is going to steam the beans until they're just crisp tender. And we're almost there. You can see the color forming in the bottom of the pan. That's what we want. Can I trust you to put that lid on quickly?
No, you can, actually. Yes, you can. Now, you're going to put water into a pan that has hot oil
Yes.
in it. Do I need to worry about this?
Not if you're ready with that lid.
Okay, I'm
then
ready.
We're good. The 1/4 cup of water. Nicely done.
Man, wow.
So this is going to go for 2 minutes. And then the next thing we're going to add is a tablespoon of finely minced ginger. We did this on a microplane or a rasp. And then also a 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. We're going to add a tablespoon of vegetable oil in the middle when this is ready.
Top off?
Are you ready to take the lid off? All right, let's go. As you can see, these greens are beautifully bright and green. It's got a beautiful color in the bottom. I'm just going to make a little room in the center. Another tablespoon of vegetable oil. And here's my tablespoon of ginger. My 1/2 teaspoon red pepper flakes. I'm just going to stir this around in the center for about 30 seconds. Smells good already.
Well, this is typical stir fry, right?
Yeah,
Clear the
exactly.
center, put
Exactly.
the ginger and whatever.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And so now we're ready to add our sauce. Just going to give it another stir again. Some of the sugar settled. Plus, I just like to have any excuse to use the whisk. Look, I got a mini spatula too. I knew you'd like that.
Everything Erica has. She's a little tiny home with little tiny furniture,
A little tiny person.
kids.
Yeah, there you go. All right, now it's more time. If you see the sauce is nice and bubbly, we're going to stir it all together. And we want our sauce to really reduce and get almost caramelized consistency. This is going to take about a minute. Look at the color on those beans, right? All because we left them alone. That looks pretty good to me, Chris.
Looks great.
Yeah, all right, so now we're going to turn off the heat and we're going to add rice vinegar. You want to use unseasoned rice vinegar. This is 2 tablespoons. Just going to pour that in. And even after we add that, our sauce still clinging to every bean. It's coating, it's not slippery. And then we're just going to, last thing we're going to do, a little bit of ground white pepper, which we really like.
Well, white pepper is used a lot in Thailand, China. It's got a little more heat. It's funny, in French cooking, it's only used when you're putting on something that's white.
Right, you don't want to blemish sauce.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
The French don't understand that, I guess, but it's really got some heat and it's a great flavor.
Yeah, really nice, a little more complex. We're ready to eat. These look fantastic.
You almost don't need a wok. I mean, you got
No,
the charring.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I like this with a little rice because I find this sauce has some really nice bold flavors. It's for you.
Man, those are really good. These have tremendous flavor.
These are not boring.
It's not too spicy either. Well, it has heat from the white pepper,
Right.
which you can tell right away. It's got that bitterness, the bittersweet going with the caramel sauce.
And the sauce really cleans to the beans. You know, it's not soupy, it's not runny.
That's the best vegetable I've ever had. Those are really good. So today at Milk Street, we learned how to stir-fry green beans without a wok. We had some dried green beans, put them in a very hot skillet for a few minutes till they really got charred. And don't move them, as
Exactly.
Erica kept telling me. And then we made a great sauce, some brown sugar to give it sort of that caramel flavor from Vietnam, and some white peppercorns, ground peppercorns, which really added a nice note to it
Yeah.
at the end. So stir-fried green beans with a caramel sauce from Vietnam without the wok. We just used a skillet.
Yeah, that's right.
Phenomenal. You know, sometimes I think that the mayonnaise-based potato salad, and we have it at Old Home Day in August. It's one of those big, containers of it. It's great ballast. If you just shipped, it's a little bit light. It would go in the hold. But it's not my favorite style because it's just too mayonnaise-y and too heavy, and the flavors are not very bright. So we're going to look to, oddly enough, Japan for a solution to this. Back in the 1870s, they started taking Western foods and remaking them in their own image called yoshoko. And so we're going to take a Japanese take on American potato salad.
Chris, the taste of this salad makes a lot of sense to me. I really love that it combines something familiar, which is American potato salad. Who doesn't know and love that? But it takes it a step further by adding a few different ingredients, and it's put together a little bit differently. We're going to start with 1.5 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes, and they've been cut into 3/4-inch pieces. So it's really important to use Yukon Gold potatoes and not substitute them with anything else. We're going to start by boiling these. So in they go to our pot. And I'm going to cover that with some water. You want enough water to just cover them on top. I'm going to add a teaspoonful of salt.
Kosher salt, table salt.
Kosher salt. It's important that we season the potatoes while they cook. I'm going to bring this up to a boil. And once it gets to a nice rolling boil, we're going to turn the heat down to a simmer and then cook that for about 12 to 15 minutes until they're tender.
Okay.
And while we do that, we're going to move on and do our pickled vegetables. The vegetables that go into this, we have cucumber, and we're going to use 1 Persian cucumber. These are smaller
Wait,
and...
you couldn't afford a real one? What is this like? Is this like...
In the rest of the world, we actually do things much smaller than we do over here. This is a normal size cucumber
Okay.
for most people. The Persian ones, they're actually very delicate in flavor. They don't have seeds to speak of. However, if this isn't available, it's perfectly fine to use an English cucumber. We want to use about 1/2 and slice it lengthwise and then scoop out the seeds before slicing if you use this. But today we have Persian cucumbers, so I'm just going to top and tail it. And then we want to cut it into very thin slices. This is important that we have this nice and thinly sliced. So I have my cucumber thinly sliced, and I'm going to put this into a bowl.
You know, that's the best thing about those cleavers, is you can just sweep everything off the cutting board.
I love these. I have here 1 medium carrot that's been grated, so I'm going to add that in. And the last thing I have here is about 1/4 cup of chopped red onion. And it's a quick pickle. We're going to use just salt. 2 teaspoons of salt, kosher salt again. That's going to go straight in. And then this is my favorite part. We use our hands. Nature's best kitchen tool. We use our hands for everything. I mean, in India, we eat with our hands. The hand is a utensil and a tool, and it helps you to pick up things too. An opposable thumb is quite handy sometimes. The salt draws out all the excess moisture from the vegetables, and we don't want extra moisture. You don't want a wet potato salad. We want a creamy potato salad. And I'm going to leave this for about 20 minutes. It needs a little bit of time to set.
Okay.
So we're going to put that aside, let our potatoes finish boiling, and then we'll come back and make the salad.
I think I got that.
So Chris, my potatoes have been boiled and drained, and they're steaming hot and ready for the step that makes this a different salad. This is a creamy potato salad because we're going to mash half of the potatoes. And that's going to give it a really creamy texture. And it's also going to help it cool faster, which I know your impatient self will appreciate.
What are you saying?
So I'm just going to go around the edges and mash about half. One more thing we want to do with the seasoning is add 3 tablespoons of unseasoned rice vinegar right on top. And this starts to mimic the flavor of the Japanese mayonnaise, which is a little bit tangier than the sweet American mayonnaise. And the other thing I want to add in here is 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper, always freshly ground. So after adding the vinegar and the pepper, I'm going to give it a quick stir and also just spread it up the sides of the bowl, and that's going to help it cool. So that will sit for about 20 minutes, and in the meantime, we're going to move back to our pickled vegetables.
This is like ping pong. Vegetables, potatoes,
Potatoes. So these vegetables, like I said, they've been pickling in the salt, and we're going to move over to the sink and rinse them. We want to get rid of all the excess salt. We've rinsed our pickled vegetables, and one last step to remove as much water as possible, we're going to squeeze them dry. This is important. Another activity to do with the hands. It is definitely helpful to do this in batches so that you make sure you get all the water out.
I would just put it in a big kitchen towel and wrap it up and squeeze it hard. That would also get it out.
That would.
But then you don't get to use your hands as much, which of course means that.
So I'm going to finish squeezing these dry. Our potatoes are cooling, and then we'll come back and assemble the salad. So Chris, our smashed potatoes have been sitting and cooling for 20 minutes. They're ready to be assembled into the salad. We have our drained pickled vegetables. Those are going to go in. And then I'm going to start building the dressing for the salad. Now, in the traditional Japanese style potato salad, they use a mayonnaise brand called Kewpie mayonnaise, which has become sort of an iconic mayonnaise brand. It's tangy and sweeter than traditional American mayonnaise. So to mimic that, we're going to start with regular American mayonnaise.
That's a very, very good place to start. Yes.
So I have a 1/2 cup of full-fat regular American style mayonnaise. And then to mimic the richness and the creaminess of Kewpie mayonnaise, I also have in here 1 hard-boiled egg and 1 extra hard-boiled egg yolk that have been chopped. And then the other thing that they like to do in this style of potato salad in Japan is add pork products. We're going to use 2 ounces of thick-cut deli smoked ham that's been chopped. And the last thing we want to do, because Kewpie mayonnaise is a little bit sweet as well, we're going to add 1 teaspoon, just 1 teaspoon of sugar. Regular white
You say
sugar.
that like I was about to panic or something.
Just
like,
1 teaspoon.
Calm down, it's only a teaspoon.
So once that's all in, I'm going to give it a stir.
I think that's
Okay,
mixed.
that's mixed.
Yeah.
I think you're getting antsy. It's
I
time
am.
to eat.
Enough mixing.
Last thing, because I love lots of color in food, we're going to add some thinly sliced scallions. I have 2 scallions here that just go right on top. And your favorite part, I'm ready to serve and eat this.
Now, this is one of those things, if you wanted to make people think this is pure health food, it looks healthy, right? I mean,
Well, you know, if you think about it, it's actually meat and 2 veg, just backwards. It's a perfectly balanced meal.
that is, it doesn't have that gloppy, heavy taste at all, and I like the ham in it too.
So we've fixed your ship ballast
Yeah.
potato salad problem.
But it's got the crunchy vegetables and the rice wine vinegar, which gives a little bit of hit, a little acidity to it. So that's what you learned today from Milk Street, how to do a potato salad by way of Japan. Pickled the vegetables with some salt, added some rice wine vinegar, a little ham as a base, and mashed some of the potatoes to get a nice creamy texture. By the way, you can get all the recipes from this season of the show at our website, which is milkstreettv.com.